Hello, Basic Algebra 2, and welcome to week 3 of our distance learning. I hope you are in the mood to have a little fun today. We're going to be looking at function operations. So we are still in chapter 7, working in section 4. Today we're going to go ahead and take two functions and actually perform operations. And so the cool thing is in math, you can take two numbers, add them together to create a new number. Or you can take two numbers, multiply them to create a new number. You can do the exact same thing with a function. You can add two functions together to create a new function. You can subtract two functions to create a new function, multiply or divide. The cool thing is if you are adding and subtracting, the main thing that you need to remember is that you can combine like terms. And remember what like terms are. That means that they have the same variable with the same exponent. And when you combine them, you just add the numbers that are in the front. You add those coefficients. When you are multiplying, that's where you're going to take the number times the number and you add up the exponents, or you're figuring out how many total letters you would have. Division. Whatever function is mentioned first. So let's say it's f of x divided by g of x. If that's how it's written, what that means is you're taking f of x and you're going to go ahead and divide it, meaning put it over the g of x function. So here are some examples. If f of x is 5x and g of x is x plus 2, if you are adding them, you're taking f of x plus g of x. A plus sign does not change anything, so you simply combine like terms. 5x plus 1 more x is how they got 6x. If you're combining like terms, you only have one value that's a constant, meaning just a number, so it's plus 2. If you are subtracting, if you take 5x minus the group x plus 2, if you are subtracting, you have to realize that you are minusing both of these terms, so you would distribute. So this would be 5x minus x minus 2. 5x minus 1x is how they got 4x. You only have one constant, it's a negative 2. If you're multiplying f of x by g of x, you're distributing. 5 times 1 is 5. 1x and another x makes 2x's, so it's x squared. Bring it to the next term. 5 times 2 is 10. This term has an x, this does not, so together they have 1. If you want f of x over g of x, f of x is 5x, it goes over g of x, which is x plus 2. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Okay, so for the first examples, we have f of x is 4x squared and g of x is x plus 1. So if I am taking f of x, it's 4x squared, I want to add that to g of x, which is x plus 1. When you are adding functions, you're just trying to combine any like terms. I don't have any like terms. This is an x with the power of 2. This is a single x, and this is a constant. So what I want to do is make sure that I write my final answer in that standard form. Remember, standard form goes from the most amount of the letter to the least. 2x's, 1x's, no x's. That's your answer. That's all you had to do here. Okay, if I go to part B, f of x is 4x squared, and that's what it tells us right here. F of x is 4x squared. G of x equals x plus 1. I want to take f of x minus g of x. The only trick when you're subtracting is to remember that you have to distribute the negative into the group that follows that minus sign. So I'd have 4x squared, negative times x is negative x, negative times a positive 1 is a negative 1. I can't combine any of these terms because this has 2x's, this has 1x, and this has none. It's already in the right order, 2x's, 1x's, no x's. If you are multiplying, I'm taking 4x squared times g of x, which is x plus 1. You're distributing. And remember with multiplying, take the number times the number, and then you add the exponents. This x, because it doesn't have a number in front, remember that's an unwritten 1. So 4 times 1 is 4. This has 2 x's, this has 1. So together there are 3. Go to the next term. 4 times 1 is 4. This term has 2 x's, this doesn't have any, so together there are 2. I cannot combine those two terms because this has 3 x's, this has 2, so they are not like terms. If you want to divide, this says f of x, so 4x squared, that goes on the top, divided by g of x, x plus 1. Okay, so there's one set of adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Just to make sure we've got it, we're going to go ahead and do this one more time. This time, f of x is 2x squared plus x minus 3. When they say to take g of x, you are taking x squared plus 1. What the directions are going to say is to find h of x. H of x is what you get. It's your solution if you take f of x plus g of x. So the idea here is that you can take two different functions, perform an operation, and get a whole new function. Okay, so f of x, 2x squared plus x minus 3, add it to g of x, x squared plus 1. When you are adding, that is combining like terms. Okay, so if I look, this is 2x squared, this is 1x squared. I'm supposed to add them. 2x squared plus 1x squared is 3x squared. Remember, when you're combining like terms, you do not change the variable, you just add the number in the front. Now x's. I only have one term here that has an x, so that term would go next. Numbers, negative 3 plus 1. Negative 3 plus 1 is a negative 2. That's your final answer. 2 x's, 1 x's, no x's. If you are subtracting, f of x, 2x squared plus x minus 3, minus g of x, x squared plus 1. Now remember, when you are subtracting, your first group goes unchanged. 2x squared plus x minus 3, that's not going to change. This negative has to get distributed into whatever follows the minus sign. So negative times x squared makes it negative x squared. Negative times 1 ends up being a minus 1. Now you combine your like terms. Both of these terms have x squared. This minus x squared, because it doesn't have a number in front, remember that's an unwritten 1. So 2x squared minus 1x squared is just 1x squared. I have a positive x. Negative 3 plus a negative 1. It's like I'm borrowing money because I'm going backwards. I borrow $3 from you, then I borrow another dollar. I'm in the hole 4. So you end up negative 3 plus a negative 1 is negative 4. 2x's, 1x's, no x's. That is your standard form, and you're done. If you are multiplying, f of x, 2x squared plus x minus 3. You're going to multiply that with x squared plus 1. I cannot do that foiling process here because this is 3 terms times 2 terms. So what I have to do is go ahead and distribute. So I'm going to take the first term in the first set of parentheses, and I have to multiply it to both terms in the second set. Remember, when you're multiplying, you multiply the numbers and you add up the exponents. X squared, because it does not have a number in front, it's the same thing as 1x squared. You can always add that 1 as a coefficient. So multiply the numbers. 2 times 1 is 2. 2x's and 2x's make 4x's. Now the 2x squared goes to the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. This has 2x's, this doesn't have any, so together there are 2. So I'm done with the 2x squared. Now I take x and I bring it into both terms. So x times x squared, this is 1x, this is 2x's, so when I add them together I have 3. X times 1 is 1x. So now I'm done with the x. Now negative 3 has to go to the 2 terms from the second group. Negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. So again, what we did is we took the first term from the first set of parentheses, distribute it to every term in the second set. Then you'd be done with that term. Second term, distribute it to each term. Then you'd be done with that term. -3, again, has to be distributed into the entire second group. Now what you have to do, combine like terms. The highest exponent that I see is a 4. There's only one term with the 4, so 2x to the power of 4 goes first. Next, I see one term that has a power of 3. Power of 2. There are 2 of them, so you combine the like terms by adding the numbers in the front. +2 minus 3 is -1. So remember, you could write it as a -1, or 1 can be unwritten, so just minus x squared. Then there's plus x minus 3. So I have 4x's, 3x's, 2x's, 1x's, no x's. That is your new function. So the cool thing is, we took 2 different functions, we multiplied them together to create a new function. If we're taking f of x divided by g of x, f of x is mentioned first, so it goes on the top. 2x squared plus x minus 3 over x squared plus 1. And guys, that is function operations. Today you do have a worksheet to practice these skills. If you need, you can always go back and rewatch the video. I hope you're having a great Tuesday, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.